Hi, I'm Figment, and today we're going to continue on with this video series about the Subtractor. I think we're about at the halfway point now, so that's kind of cool. It only gets shorter from here. So today we're going to talk about velocity and the velocity section of the Subtractor. It's pretty straightforward once you think about it. But first, I'm going to tell you what velocity is. So, velocity basically is the intensity at which a note is played. So, if you think about a guitar string, let's say, and you strum it very lightly or very softly, it's going to have a certain sound. Versus if you plucked it real hard. Or a drum. Think about just tapping a snare drum with reasonable force, as opposed to just banging a snare drum with all your energy. It's going to be a difference in the way it sounds, volume wise and timbre wise. It's going to have a different context, different timbre. So, as you can see here, here's our velocity scale, and I've put a bunch of notes back to back, and I've changed the velocity for each note. Some of these are very low, 56, all the way up to some high ones in the 120s, and then down to 104. And so there's a wide range in velocity. It could even also have been 0, like completely up, but just keep that like that for now. So that's what velocity is. These are all the same notes, but they're played at with different velocity values. Now, the velocity section of the Subtractor basically lets you affect certain parameters, or I should say, it lets velocity have an effect on certain parameters. So you have these bipolar knobs, which have negative values, so 0 in the center, all the way to negative 64, and then all the way to positive 63. 0 in the center means like it's off, like no effect is going to take place from velocity. Of course, a positive value will move. Well, let's talk about what these things are first, and then I'll explain to you what the positive and negative values have, what they mean in context of these things. So you have the amplitude or the volume, just like you had the amp envelope. This is controlling volume. This is volume again. You have FM, mod envelope, phase, filter frequency 2, filter envelope, filter. What's that? Yeah. Filter decay, the filter frequency decay of this envelope. Mix knob and the amplitude attack, amplitude envelope attack. Kind of weird. Filter frequency, filter envelopes decay, and amp envelopes attack. It's like just having the D from the filter envelope, or just having the A from the amp envelope. But those are the 9 options you have to choose from. So let's talk about amplitude, I guess, first. So as you increase this and you give it a positive value, like let's say 35, what that means is as the velocity intensifies, the amplitude of the synthesizer will intensify. Let's see what that sounds like. if you had something like, let's say FM, and I'll put some bizarre wave in here, and the amp amplitude, the frequency amount is on 0, and we turn FM up a bit. What that's going to do is, as velocity intensifies, it's going to turn and intensify this FM amount. Same thing, you could have a negative value. So let's say you brought it down by 29. But let's say you already had this, you already set your FM to be a certain amount, let's say 30 or so. So what that means is the FM knob's already at some value, 30. As the velocity intensifies, it's going to bring that FM knob down now. So you can have negative values, or you have positive values. So let's and so on. So each one of these things has some type of a so you can even have filtered decay. So if you had this up as velocity increases, it will actually bring this decay knob up. If you had it in a negative zone and the decay value is, I don't know, here you have like a, oh wait, that's sustain, boy, decay, this guy. Um, if you had a negative value and you had like a long decay or a reasonable decay, as as velocity increased, it would bring this knob down. Same thing if you had some reasonable decay, but you crank that up as velocity increases, it would then raise that decay value. Same thing applies for all these things: the mix knob, the amplitude, envelope attack, and so on and so forth. These bipolar knobs all work the same, just affecting some different parameter. I wonder if we'll have time to talk about the LFOs today. I'm going to cut this short and just wrap up the whole LFO section in one swift video together. And there's not much more after that, so definitely play around with velocity settings. It's a very useful way to get some dynamicism out of your synth sound. So let's say, if you're playing a note harder, it might be louder and the frequency modulation might increase, which might give it a different texture for more intense notes. Or if you same thing, phase, if you had a phase setting on or so, and it would just create a dynamic sound depending on the velocity of the note, and you would kind of get this instrument sound, which I was trying to describe with the snare drum or the guitar string. As that string is plucked softly, it's going to have a different quality. As it might be the same note, it just might be a E sharp, same note, but if it's really plucked hard, or if that drum is really banged hard, it's going to have a different timbre and just characteristic to it. So velocity is a good way to make some settings. Of course, you can have multiple knobs moving in multiple directions, and as the volume or the intensity, I keep saying volume, as the velocity of the instrument changes, so do these certain characteristics. That's kind of the whole reason and purpose behind why this velocity section is even there. So definitely experiment around with that and see what you can create. Any questions? Any comments? You know where to put them. And until next time, I'll talk to you later.